This video is sponsored by Squarespace. F1 drivers always have to keep their options open. Loyalty is hard to come by in the paddock, and if you haven't considered all possibilities, there's a good chance you end up getting burnt. Well, today I want to look at 6 F1 driver transfers that almost happened and didn't for various reasons, ones that I reckon you might have forgotten about. How close were they to actually happening? Why exactly did they fall through? And had they gone ahead, how would their respective careers be looking today? Well, my name's Tomo, let's talk about it. Esteban Ocon to Williams. This story is just too funny, okay? I love it. So it was revealed last year by James Vowles that he'd had a series of conversations with Esteban Ocon when looking at the options to fill that vacant Williams seat for 2025. But of course, Ocon was still an Alpine driver last year. So how did he go about meeting up with James and discussing things with Williams? Did they meet up in an undisclosed hotel room in disguise? No. Esteban drove his company car to Grove and Alpine caught him in the act. Former Renault team principal, I am losing count, Marcin Budkowski, revealed that everyone at the team saw that Esteban was at Williams. He was in Enstone before the Silverstone race, and when he's there he drives an Alpine that was lent to him as a company car, but these cars have trackers, the GPS. So it turned out that the Alpine car was parked in the Williams parking lot for 5 hours during Esteban's stay in Great Britain, and this is how everyone at Alpine found out Esteban spent half a day there. Now, to be fair to Ocon, he was well within his rights to, look for other seats because he was definitely not getting a contract extension at Alpine. It's just very, very funny how this all got found out. Many reports at the time were suggesting that Ocon was looking to actually make a mid-season jump to replace Sargent when things were going so bad. Obviously that didn't happen. It was Colapinto in the end who took that step up. And James Vowles clarified that they were evaluating him for 2025 and beyond. Esteban came in for not a real seat fit, but I wanted to evaluate him for 25 and 6. I needed to do that because I actually needed to ascertain whether he fit in the car or not. Alex Albon is a tall chap, but his dimensions are a bit difficult in certain dimensions. He was definitely a consideration. I've known him for many years. Obviously at Mercedes, he fell under myself and Toto and Gwen's management looked after him. If you create the right environment around him, he can be very strong. Ultimately, Williams didn't have to worry because they ended up with their number 1 pick in the end. Carlos Sainz decided to join the team and Esteban Ocon ended up in a Haas. And I do actually think Ocon would have been a decent backup option. I think Albon Ocon would have been a very, very tasty lineup. 2 of my favourite drivers together as well. I would have enjoyed that. And looking at Williams' current trajectory, especially with the Mercedes PU for next year onwards, and just Grove feels like a really positive place right now. I'm sure Ocon would have loved to take that opportunity. That must have been top of his shopping list, surely. When it comes to picking the right F1 seat, it can be a very, very difficult decision, but fortunately, thanks to today's video sponsor, Squarespace, if it comes to building your very own beautiful online home, if you want a website building platform to bring it to life, Squarespace is the place to go. Clearly, no brainer. Whether it's a blog, whether it's a portfolio, whether it's an online store like my store, TOMMO'SRacingGoods.com, where I sell my merchandise, it is honestly an absolute breeze with thousands of beautiful drag and drop templates, AI-powered design intelligence software to help you bring it all together, 24/7 customer support. What more could you ask for? I created my very first Squarespace website all the way back in 2018, predating the F1 content on this YouTube channel. I think it's a great product, but don't just take my word for it. It's completely free to try, so give it a go yourself. If it doesn't work for you, fine. If it does and you want to publish your finished website live to the world, that's when you have to pay, and that's the time you head to squarespace.com/TomoF1 to get 10% off of your very first website or domain. Oscar Piastri to Williams. Sticking with Williams, this is a pretty mad one to think about in the context especially of what we're seeing in F1 this season. We all know how ludicrous the Piastri to McLaren story was, how that played out. I will never forget that early morning or late night live stream, whenever it was. It was crazy. This is not a drill. Oh my God. I'm literally losing my mind right now. Alpine announced Oscar Piastri and then he's just put this out. I understand that without my agreement, Alpine F1 put a press release late this afternoon that I'm driving for them next year. This is wrong and I have not signed a contract with Alpine for 2023. I will not be driving for Alpine next year. What? With Alonso's surprise departure to Aston Martin, Alpine balked and thought, well, hang on, we've got this really promising junior here. Let's chuck him in the car. Oscar Piastri had other plans that legally held tight. He went to McLaren and now he's leading the 2025 F1 World Drivers' Championship. Alpine just faffed about too much, ultimately, right? They didn't trust enough in Oscar's ability and they got punished for it. The best they were prepared to offer him was a 2-year loan deal to Williams to race alongside Alex Albon in 23. And, you know, if Alonso was to leave ahead of 24, then maybe just do 1 year at Williams, then into the Alpine. Former Alpine team principal, another one, Laurent Rossi, did not mince his words when it came to his criticism of Oscar and his unpreparedness to accept that 2-year Williams loan deal. George Russell spent 3 years at Williams, a good school if any to learn the ropes and then go back to the mothership. Sorry, quick one, for Alpine to describe themselves as the mothership. They are P9 in the constructors right now, Williams are P5, clearly ahead. That's really funny. He himself acknowledges that he didn't want the seat at Williams. It's as simple as that. And yeah, no, he didn't. But that's because he had a McLaren seat available, a team who wanted him. That was the difference. A team who actually wanted him in their seat and weren't messing him about. Zak Brown had courted not only him, but arguably more importantly, his manager, Mark Webber. And Mark knows what it's like to be a number 2, and he wasn't about to let his boy go through the same nonsense with Alpine. But look, it all seemed to work out in the end, didn't it? McLaren resurged to the top. Oscar is currently leading the way. Williams are doing bits in the top end of the midfield. Good momentum to carry into next year. And Alpine are once again in chaos. So, good call, Oscar. But just imagine if it had happened, if Oscar had gone to Williams for that 2-year loan deal alongside Alex Albon. Look, of course, I believe he would have done a much better job than Logan Sargent and been way closer to Alex Albon out the gates. And actually, I think it might have ended up pretty damaging to my boy Albon's career because he'd have had 2 unproven teammates in Sargent and Latifi prior to that, and then Piastri walks in, and I think Piastri would have got very close very quickly. And when any rookie comes in alongside an established teammate and gets close, it never bodes well. And then who knows for McLaren, maybe Gasly would have got that seat alongside Lando Norris. That was one that was always rumoured, but I've never seen any kind of concrete evidence that McLaren Gasly was actually a thing. Oh, hello. We decided to grow Minton's fur out, but probably a bad time of year to do it because, you know, it's very hot at the minute. You tired, mate? This is cousin Ollie. Good boy. The only thing better than 1 dog on my shoulder is 2 dogs on my shoulders. Hello, boys. But the thing is, it's also impossible to know the kind of impression Piastri would have been able to leave in a Williams or in an Alpine. You can always talk about midfield drivers who are maximising their machinery, but because they're not in top cars, you're not seeing podiums, you're not seeing race wins. So it would have been fascinating. I'm glad though, because Oscar's clearly got the minerals to be a world champion. So I'm glad he's got the machinery to absolutely deliver on that potential. Still a long way to go this year, but he's in a very good place. Nico Hülkenberg to Mercedes. Now this one stings quite a bit from Mr. Podiumless, sadly. Speaking back in 2020, Ross Brawn revealed that Nico Hülkenberg was the second choice if they hadn't have managed to get hold of Lewis Hamilton. I almost signed him years ago when I was in charge at Mercedes. If Lewis hadn't joined Mercedes when he did, Nico was our next choice. Now the question is, would they have elected for Hülkenberg to come in 2013 and replace Schumacher still? Nico was definitely an option for that seat in 2013, but of course Lewis was way more proven than Nico. It was way more of a no-brainer to replace Schumacher with Hamilton. Maybe Hülkenberg, that wouldn't have panned out that way, you know. But actually, in my opinion, the Hülkenberg at the time had come off a really strong season in 2012 at Force India. He had proven his 1-lap prowess at Williams early on in his career. Yeah, I mean, Schumacher at the end of his career wasn't the animal that he was in his prime. And I think Hülkenberg, yeah, probably still would have been a bit of an upgrade for that team, having both the Nicos in that car. Now look, obviously snapping up Lewis was the right decision, but if that hadn't come about, and then especially from 2014 onwards, to have Rosberg and Hülkenberg as teammates in that dominant car where they could have had a title fight between them, that would have been really interesting. Like, who do you think would have come out on top? Rosberg, Hülkenberg, same machinery in their primes. That's a good question. Like, obviously Hulk would have won plenty of races, not to mention podiums. Championships versus Rosberg. I mean, I think Rosberg's probably more naturally gifted, talented, but then Hülkenberg's just never had the machinery to really show where he should be in F1. You've always felt like Hülkenberg should have got better equipment. And like I say about Piastri earlier, if Piastri's in Williams and Alpines, how can he really show what he can do if he's not got that machinery that can fight at the front? And maybe you end up with a career like Nico Hülkenberg's, where I think Hülkenberg has all the potential promise in the world, but was just never given the equipment to show it. I also think that given Nico had to go for that all or nothing approach in 2016 to get the job done and decided to retire early because he was like, I'm not prepared to keep up this level of commitment for the rest of my career because I had to put everything on the line. Maybe if he's got a slightly easier run of it, because of course Hamilton ahead of Hülkenberg, absolutely. Maybe we've still got Nico Rosberg in F1 to this day. Maybe he has a completely different perspective. The butterfly effect of that would have been pretty crazy, because I mean Nico's like 6 months younger than Lewis, remember? And talking to Hamilton, where would he have ended up? I mean, Eccleston in 2013 was talking about how Hamilton was entertaining Red Bull. I don't see it. There's very little to back that up beyond Bernie Eccleston's word, which is not something I particularly trust, to be honest. Daniel Kvyat to Ferrari. Shout out the lads at Pit Stop Fracas for reminding me of this one. Damn, Daniel. Things didn't really work out for him, did it? And it's easy to forget that he outscored his namesake, Ricciardo, in 2015 as Red Bull teammates. Kvyat put in some stellar performances during this time at Red Bull Racing, but unfortunately it's more remembered for him getting dropped in Spain 2016 and Max winning on debut and being a torpedo, according to Seb. But then according to Daniel, he did have another big opportunity, one at Ferrari. Speaking on the Track Limits podcast a couple of years back, he revealed all. I was performing really well. I just scored another podium for the team, 2016 Chinese Grand Prix. And then at the time, I also had a proposal to race for Ferrari to replace Kimi. That was going on behind the curtain, so it was a very difficult situation also for me mentally to go back from being wanted by Ferrari, having seen the contract, and then you go back to Toroso. That Red Bull demotion came after just 4 Grand Prix, and spending the remainder of that 2016 in the Toroso alongside Carlos Sainz, the performances waned and so did Ferrari's interest. In those remaining 17 races, Carlos Sainz scored 44 points, Kvyat scored 4. Now look, would have Ferrari gotten an upgrade on Raikkonen by bringing Kvyat in? Maybe, you know, I think his confidence obviously took a big hit and that reflected in his performances dropping back to Toro Rosso. And he said in that same podcast that he'd kind of had enough of the Red Bull system by this stage and was kind of looking ahead for a way out, even though he did race for the team in 2017 as well, and then returned in 2019. But I understand the sentiment. I'm not doubting what he's saying. Raikkonen was far from his prime Ferrari days when he returned the team in 2014. So I think, yeah, probably Kvyat, with his younger years, confident Kvyat really did have it in him. I think Seb and Daniel could have been a decent little combo. A backup to Seb's 17 and 18 title challenges, but no more than that, to be honest. Valtteri Bottas to Ferrari. Bottas absolutely cooked at Williams, his first team in Formula 1. Coming through the same generation as Daniel Ricciardo, they kind of raced in their junior Formula era. Valtteri took 4th, 5th and 8th across 14, 15 and 16. 2 P3s and a P5 in the constructors for Williams. That Mercedes PU was clearly a cheat code for them back then. And other teams were paying attention. As early as 2015, Valtteri was publicly denying rumours linking him to Ferrari to take Kimi Raikkonen's seat, sound familiar, alongside Sebastian Vettel. It seems like they were evaluating Kvyat and Bottas simultaneously. Who knows which one they were more interested in? Very difficult to say. Speaking in 2015, Valtteri said, "I saw and heard plenty of stories and it's sometimes quite funny to hear those because you know what's the case and what's not, and there's a lot of people making stuff up. The fact is at the moment I'm focusing on this season, getting the maximum for us as a team, and the rest I don't know yet." So not a denial then. And Ferrari team principal Maurizio Arrivabene at the time didn't help things either, refusing to rule out a Bottas move for 2016. I promised in the preseason I would never lie to the media, but for this question it's too early to give a precise answer. And then speaking regarding Raikkonen, who of course was in the seat at the time, if he continues like this we will extend for another year. At the time it seemed that Ferrari had chosen to extend Raikkonen's stay at the team of their own volition. However, speaking in 2017, Claire Williams revealed that it was in fact Williams who explicitly blocked the move. We stood in Valtteri's way once when Ferrari came along, and I made a promise I wouldn't stand in his way again. That second part is of course referring to Bottas going to Mercedes to replace Nico after his shock retirement. Now we'll never know for sure how serious that Ferrari offer was. Were Williams blocking him from a concrete contract that he literally had and wanted to pick up, or were they just blocking him from having any kind of reasonable conversations with them? But I do think Vettel Bottas would have been an even better lineup than Vettel Kvyat to replace Vettel Raikkonen. Performance wise, I think Bottas would have been closer to Vettel, and also, yeah, I mean, who doesn't get along with Valtteri Bottas? He seems like the most easy human being to get along with in the world. Like, he's not even some grumpy Finn. He's actually like just seemingly a really pleasant bloke. Do I think Bottas would have outperformed Seb in 17 and 18? No, but I do think he would have been, again, a good chunk closer than Raikkonen was, and maybe would have helped Seb out, taking points off of Lewis in his Mercedes. Maybe. He was a demon over a lap as well. I think he would have been pretty close to Seb over a lap, I really do. But then who knows, with Leclerc coming onto the scene in 2019, would Valtteri have done enough to show that he was the guy to stay in Ferrari and Vettel to leave? I'm not so sure. All in all, I think Bottas to Mercedes was the right move. I know he's not won a title. I know he was the, bridesmaid, never the bride, but he's got double-digit race wins, which is something that most F1 drivers could only dream of. Kevin Magnussen to Red Bull via Toroso. Thank you, Rafa Yasfi, for reminding me of this super niche one. In fact, I would say Kevin Magnussen has one of the most what-if F1 careers in recent memory. Hit the ground running with his one and only podium on debut for McLaren at the 2013 Australian Grand Prix, but this was just the beginning of a decade-long slump for the Woking-based team, a far cry from the team that we see today. He felt he was unlucky to lose his seat at the end of 2013. He felt like he, compared very favourably to Jensen in qualifying, but just, made too many mistakes in the races, and if he'd tidied that up, he would have been good, but McLaren didn't give him the time. Kev then went to Renault for a year and spent the remainder of his F1 career at Haas, a team that haven't exactly been a stable, consistent platform since they joined the sport in 2015, have they? The thing is, Kevin did have sniffs at other opportunities. In fact, he started 2018 so strong that Ferrari were interested. He even had a run in their simulator, but alas, Charles Leclerc in that second half, particularly of 2018, impressed so much that there was no way they were going to put Magnussen in that Ferrari over Charles. But then it wasn't only Ferrari who noticed his quality performances, it was of course Red Bull, with whom he'd had some pretty serious conversations by the sound of it. After that 2018 season, Daniel Ricciardo left Red Bull, and I remember my management speaking to Christian Horner because of course everybody was talking about the Red Bull seat. Christian said, look, there's nothing at Red Bull, but we can talk about Toroso. And I said, no, let's not do that, which I probably should have done. It was Gasly who took that Red Bull seat, Alex Albon was promoted from F2 to Toroso, and then Gasly didn't do a good job, and Albon came in, so the guy who got the Toroso seat ended up in the Red Bull. The way things played out, man, what a missed opportunity for Kev. Given how late in the day Alex Albon was called up to that 2019 Toroso seat, he literally had a Formula E drive secured. I'm sure if Kevin Magnussen was interested in it, he would have definitely got it. And I see no reason why Kev wouldn't have done a better job than Alex at Toroso relative to Daniel Kvyat in 2019. I mean, he was more experienced, he'd had years in Formula 1, and Magnussen was rapid, man. So then Gasly would have still been getting dropped after 12 races, and then Magnussen would be in a Red Bull seat for the second half of 2019. Look, maybe that Red Bull second seat curse would have hurt Kevin Magnussen just as much as it's hurt all the other drivers that have gone through, but maybe it wouldn't have. Like, I feel like Kevin Magnussen and Red Bull feels like a really good fit. Like George Russell to Red Bull, these rumours, that doesn't seem like an alignment of personalities, I guess, but I think Magnussen and Red Bull absolutely does. The Photoshop just looks right. It's a shame because I really don't think we ever saw the best from Kevin Magnussen. Were you surprised by any of these? And let me know in the comments below any other potential driver transfers that didn't happen that you think deserve a video, I guess. Let me know in the comments, like the video if you enjoyed, and subscribe, because I'm almost at 333,333 subscribers, which, come on, that's a vibe. My name's Tommo, thanks again, have a good one, ta-da.